Welcome back to the Goalie Corner presented by Stop Goaltending. I'm Coach Mike. Today we got Kendra Woodland on with us to talk about off-season planning. Kendra, thanks for taking the time. I know you're still at school at time of recording, so it's nice of you to do that. Can you give us kind of like a Sparks note of what your off-season, let's say normal routine starts off with?
I think, at the university level, you're usually done mid-March. If you go all the way to nationals, I guess it'd be later for NCAA, but definitely in Canada. I think, first off, I think take 2 weeks just to chill. I think you have a hard last 2 months of your season. You're going through playoff runs and you're going to national championship tournaments. I think it's just so important to take the rest. Your body's kind of in shock, but I think 3, 4 weeks off ice. I think 2 weeks probably just away from the gym and then just get back into the gym, but take your time off the ice. I think, like I said, your body's pretty beat up and run down. So that's what I would say for sure, for me at least.
That kind of goes into the podcast last week with Billy, where we talked about how to take a break, actually, which was nice for you to kind of rope in by accident. But in that one, we did say take 2 weeks completely off and have a reflection time, live in the moment, live in the present, and then start planning for how are you going to reintroduce hockey or reintroduce not exercise, but reintroduce focused training into your routine, right?
Yeah, I mean, like when I say 2 weeks off, I'm not saying like lay in your bed for 24 hours a day for 2 weeks. You're still getting out, you're going for walks, you go for a jog, whatever. I think staying moving and active, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think that first 2 weeks is super important just to decompress and just take your time.
Yeah, we're taking a week or 2 weeks off of being a goalie, not an athlete.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the 2 weeks are there, right? You're just being you, doing whatever, right? Staying active, but staying out of the rink essentially, and making sure the mental is staying out of the rink as well. How do you reintroduce either on ice or what's the 2 weeks after sort of thing?
I would say like the 2 weeks after, like I said, you're probably like for me, I'm hitting the gym again. You're getting back into mobility, your stretches, really taking care of your body, but easing back into it. You don't want to go and do 4 sets of like 8 reps of stuff in the squat rack. You kind of need to ease back into it and take care of your muscles and stuff. But yeah, I think like focusing on your mobility and your stretching to stay limber, I think would be biggest for me. But um yeah, that's kind of where I'd go with it after that initial 2 weeks for sure.
A big thing that I see a lot of eager kids do, they reluctantly take the time off. And then when they start up again, they go 0 to 100 with the intensity, right? Off ice, whatever it is, right? Sounds like you're kind of saying, like, it's okay to go to the gym. I think the gym's kind of just a generic term for workout, whether that's in a field or not.
Yeah.
Um, and it's okay to do a 60% workout, right? If you're doing sprints, you're doing 60%. You're just getting the blood active. You're engaging the muscles again, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's kind of like the first month, right? 2 weeks off, not intense, still be an athlete, still do stuff. Don't be a couch potato. Um, and then the next 2 weeks is reintroducing and working the intensity up from a very low percentage.
I think it's like giving a reminder to your muscle memory though. Like you said, how do you ease back into being a goalie again? It's like your muscles already know what you're doing. You've been a goalie for how long? It muscle memory is a lot of it. I think taking that time off and then easing back into it's reminding your muscles what you're doing so that by the time you can ramp from 60 to 100, you're still able to in time because your muscles have been warmed up, reminded of the muscle memory of movements and whatnot for sure.
You're kind of nice and lucky that you're playing college and that off season is longer than minor hockey off season, right? I made the point with Billy that hockey is definitely a 12-month sport if you want it to be, right? Especially if you're minor hockey 13, U15 age, because you got
Yeah,
regular season, you got spring hockey, right into spring training, right into hockey camps in the summer, right back into tryouts, right?
totally.
So you have extra time to decompress and you have extra time to re-engage as well, right?
Yeah.
If we're thinking more like minor hockey ages, right? Maybe speaking more to the parents rather than the athletes, because the parents do dictate a lot of the schedule. After spring hockey, it's about late May, right? Are
Yeah.
you taking that June month completely off because you got 2 months to rebuild?
I wouldn't go the full. I'm trying to think back to when I was in minor hockey and stuff. I don't think I took a full month since you said it does go late.
Yeah,
I definitely think it varies with where you're playing and how much time you do have. I think it's the same timeline, but just condensed like within 2 weeks, right? I would say 3 weeks you take off in terms of you take a week and a half where you're just kind of staying moving, but you're not necessarily in the gym or on the ice.
yeah,
And then next week and a half after that, you're ramping up again, like in the gym. And then kind of after that 3 week period, you're kind of able to start ramping up on ice in the gym as well.
gotcha. Okay. For you, you've been through it enough times where I'm sure you have a plan already set in place without really having to figure out what it's going to look like, right?
Hmm.
But during the summer training months, right? If you could kind of two examples where you are now and where you were at U15, U18, what did those training months look like? Like how often-ish were you on the ice? How often-ish were you in the gym or doing a workout sort of thing?
Yeah, I think when I was U18, well, like U15, U18, kind of those ages, I wasn't on the ice as much, I think, as I would probably have wanted to looking back. There wasn't too many opportunities at that time to get in that training in like your June, July. But once August hits, because it's tryouts, you have those pre-tryout camps where it's like I don't even know what they would call it, but like a reboot kind of thing where you
Right,
can kind of like get back on the ice and everyone's hitting the ice again. So that June, July was kind of hard to find ice. I think I managed to. Actually something unique that my dad and I did, this was more pre-COVID, but we would go and just pay $5 to go public skating, and we would get our half gear on, no sticks, glove and blocker, and no one skates in the middle. So you just kind of go in the middle and you can work on your skating fundamentals and your technique so that you kind of stay with it like that, but you're not necessarily out there getting a bagger. But like
right.
you're,
You're
it's
easing back into it.
and it's $5 for 2 hours. Like, I mean, it's kind of
Can't
cheap.
beat that.
It's cheap ice, but it's like it's helpful in like that easing back into it, but you're still finding that ice time. Because I think it's so different for players and goalies, right? Like players want to jump right back in and they need to
Puck
do
time.
do a whole other process where goalies there's so much to their own game that they need to figure out the fundamentals of skating, your recovery. I learned how to recover properly at a public skate at Brock Arena in Kamloops. Like it's something as simple as that. But I think moving on to more as a university student athlete, my summers, you're kind of more that elite standard. So it was a bit easier for me to find ice. I know at home for me, playing with all the guys that are back from playing pro, a lot of like the Kamloops Blazers, they come back early. A lot of like junior A players are still around and need kind of a hub to train at, which was easier for me. And I was lucky that I have that in my hometown. But I mean, yeah, like you might not have that. So it's like seeking ice like that. But I think as I've gotten older, I've had a bit more ice in that, well, older June, July, and then you're fully ramping for August. I would say I'd be on the ice late June to end of August for sure. Now.
Would you, this might be terrible business sense here, but would you recommend like the 5 day goalie camps in early summer?
Absolutely. I can't remember. I used to do Francois Allaire when they came to Kamloops, and I did it basically every summer, and it was basically the same kind of criteria and per day you do the same stuff, but it was so good for getting back into things. And I remember it being a little bit earlier in the summer. I don't want to say June, but it definitely wasn't happening the last week of August.
Right.
But it was good to get moving again, and you're still doing a camp and you're
Yeah.
doing goal stuff, but it's a good refresher, like I said, for muscle memory. And it's not so late that you're going to be bad going into tryouts either.
Right. I think that was a key point there too, right? Because a lot of people think more camps, the better.
Yeah.
A lot of people think early camps aren't as effective because, well, then what are you doing after the camp, right? If you don't have something set up after the camp where maybe just one or two ice times to constantly remember what you worked on that week, is it a wasted week, right? I still say no. I think there's always benefit to it based on the camp itself, right? And the program that's running it. There's camps that have 30, 40 kids on the ice. You're just there to get reps at that point, really, um, and maybe learn what's the overarching goal instead of learning the personalized to yourself.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm a big believer in like if you're able to get consistent semi-privates and make a game plan with your goalie guy or girl, then that's kind of the most beneficial way. And then when August hits, okay, now you start ramping up a little bit, and then like a week before tryouts, you cool down just a touch so you feel good for the tryouts.
I agree totally. Like it's like a fine line almost of like too much, too little. I'm a big believer in like quality over quantity. I know like I learned a lot about that when they would hold Hockey Canada goalie camps on the women's program. I went to one and it was like you get in, you do 4 reps to the best of your ability, and then you can learn after because once you start doing 6, 8, 10 reps, you're tired, your habits go down the drain, stuff like that. So it's that quantity over or quality over quantity. Like you said, if you're going in a bunch of camps, you're going for reps or whatever, you're getting back moving. But what are you actually taking from it or learning from that if you're just tired the whole time and not getting the most out of it, if that makes sense?
Yeah, it does, right? I think the hardest thing to do is actually sit down and plan, right? There's a lot to be done in the off season and spring summer training that can be done, but it's sit down with your network of people, right? So if you're the athlete, parents, your goalie coach, your off ice trainer, if you got one, someone that you might know who's been through the process a little bit, right? And make some sort of plan. And it doesn't have to always be ice, 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 ice. A lot of development is done off ice, right? All the strength training, all the agility, all the hand-eye, all that can be mastered off ice. Obviously, you want to mix in on ice to make sure you're still remember how to catch a puck.
Totally.
But I think the spring, maybe this might be my personal belief. The spring could be used more if you don't have junior spring camps or anything like that. Spring could be used more for off ice development, and then the summer start implementing the on ice development, and then
Yeah,
mid to late summer, start transitioning where it's maybe a little bit less off ice, a little bit more on ice,
absolutely.
especially for
Yeah.
the U18s, junior age goalies, where you don't have to go to camps. Like you know how to stop the puck. Now it's about fine tuning your skill.
I think I was gonna say like if you're in the younger age bracket, you're able to go to those camps to get those reps and to get a bit of that attention from those goalie coaches. But like you said, if you're junior age, elite, pro, you're gonna have one-on-one sessions to, you said, fine tune and make sure like you're with someone that knows you as a goalie who can hold you accountable in those times when you need it most instead of, maybe like you said, 30 goalies on the ice and you got maybe one or two goalie coaches going around. That ratio is a little bit more, it's a little bit harder to deal with when you're older, but I think that definitely a line between those. I think your off ice too would also include like your mental performance. This popped into my head. I don't know if this is going to get off topic, but I think having a social life throughout the summer too, like the off season, making sure that you're actually not so, yes, you're invested in what you're doing and you're invested in your craft, but making sure that you're able to take a step back and take a break because it can get mentally taxing to be constantly all
Yeah.
in those moments. I think it's like compartmentalizing of, okay, I'm at the rink, I'm on the ice, this is what I'm doing right now, and this is all that's on my brain. You move to the gym, I'm working out right now. What am I getting out of this? This is on my brain. Maybe it's like those 2 sessions, and then you've got the rest of the day to hang out with friends, hang out with family. It's like, okay, now I'm shutting off that hockey side of things. What am I getting out of this? I think is huge. And I think it's a huge aspect of your mental performance too, is
Yeah.
making sure that you're staying light mentally in the off season as well, because it can get grueling.
And that can be kind of wrapped into being in the moment,
Totally.
right? Living with the here and now. So if you're here and now in a rink, well, then you're here and now developing. As soon as you step out of the rink, you don't have to forget everything you just did. But if you're going to the beach to hang out with friends, be at the beach hanging out with friends. Don't think about the rink.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, like you're mindful. You're not forgetting about what you just did and you're going to the beach not to be a dummy, right? Like you're kind of just you're not forgetting, you're remembering, but you're taking those breaks when you need them and focusing on other things in those moments. Like you
Yeah.
said, being
My favorite thing to tell parents of like U13 kids is, hey, let them be kids.
yeah.
Like after spring hockey, let them be kids,
Had
right?
that like when I was growing up, I had to miss a lot of birthday parties and like during the hockey season and everything like that. So um that was something that I don't necessarily regret. I think I've loved what's come out of it, but when you're a kid, you don't really understand like you think you're missing out and it
Yeah.
kind of sucks sometimes. So you're totally right. Just be a kid. You're only a kid once.
Yeah.
Like
Don't be a
when
dumb kid that doing dumb stuff.
yeah, like I said, you're not going to do that stuff to be a dummy, but you're going to have a bit of fun and kind of let loose and be a kid and just have some fun.
Right. Do you sit down still and map out your summer to the best you can, knowing that there's going to be changes made? If you're mapping it out now, there's obviously going to be changes made in August because you can't predict exactly what's going to happen.
Totally. I think I work backwards. So if I look at, I'm going to say my student athlete career and my preparation for the year after I finish one season. So say we finish mid to end of March, and then I take 2 weeks to do the school that I didn't do for the last 4 weeks, being in a playoff run and a national championship run. And kind of take that time to get my life back on track, like away from sport, because school is your next most important piece when you're a student athlete, and you need to pay attention to it the rest of the year because once your season ends, exam time like 2 weeks later. So it's like preparing yourself away from sport. But I think like, you already know like, your season usually to come back to school, you're probably coming back say August 31st to say September 1st. So you know that you can work up to that point. So you can kind of work backwards from there. It's like, where do I want to be September 1st to come back into training camp with my team and into the exhibition season in September? So then you kind of work backwards and be like, okay, like you said, if I'm taking the week before I head back to training camp to kind of take a bit of a break, stay active, but take that break. And then you go before that and you think, okay, for the first 3 weeks of August, what am I doing? July, what am I doing? All leading up to where I want to be September 1st to come back to training camp. If that makes sense.
It does. How did you get to that point? Like when you making off-season plans, was it simple?
I think it was a lot more simple when I was younger. I felt like more resources. I also had a lot of help from my parents. Because as you get older, you need to start finding your own ice time. Your parents kind of just leave it with you because
Yeah.
you're an adult, so you gotta find your own ice. But um, it definitely wasn't easy, I think. But at the same time, I had a trainer that I worked with at home throughout the season, so I was still able to just continuously go to my off ice trainer. It was just more maybe on ice that I struggled a bit more to find, like I was saying, until August. But now it's a little easier with your planning. I know that there's ice in June and July, not just August for elite pro people that, it is a 12-month sport.
Right. If you let it.
Yes. Yes. I think when you look at like say guys that come back from playing in the AHL, like they might take a month. So it's an 11-month sport for them, right? And I
Yeah.
think as I've gotten older and falling into more of those elite like pools, I would be the same, like 11-month sport for sure.
And just to make sure we're all on the same page, it's not 11 months of crazy intensity,
No.
right? It might actually only be like 8 months, maybe 9 months of high intensity. But within that, if you listen to the podcast the last episode, within that, you can find one day, let's say a week, at least every 2 weeks, to reset and take that one day, 24-hour break, right?
I think I do that all summer long. Like you work out, like my week looks like I work out four days a week. Usually like a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. So I kind of have a little bit of break in the middle.
Yeah.
But of the 5 days of the week, I'm also on the ice.
Yeah.
So I get kind of one day off the gym, but I'm still on the ice the 5 days. But it's the weekend I'm really able to do recovery because they're grueling weeks, especially I'd say July, end of July, beginning of August. Um, Very high intensity time where you're gonna want to take that day or two to just be and recover and stretch and roll out and everything just so you can stay fresh for the next grueling week for that basically month and a half period.
Yeah, you're essentially kind of getting back into the rhythm of what the season's going to be like, right?
Well, yeah, like
The season's
yeah.
hard.
Well, yeah, like we have at school, we only do the gym twice a week, maybe three times, depending on your game schedule that week. But you have one day off of the ice. You're practicing 5 times or 4 times. You're playing 2 games. You only really get one day off the ice.
Yeah.
So it's really prioritizing the time when you do get it to recovery, and being mindful of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking back now, do you wish you started making like an off-season plan earlier in your career?
Yes, I think not too much earlier, but definitely earlier than I did. I think it could have been introduced more at like maybe like the U16 hockey BC level. I know that you would kind of go to provincial jamboree camps at U16 and stuff like that. I think if it were to be introduced more off ice, like at that level, and be like, this is what it's going to look like once you move into the U18 level, where I think I was second year U18, the summer between my, no, the summer between 17 years old. And I had gone to Hockey Canada and it's obviously promoted there. They introduce it there, which I think is great. But I think if you are a player that can go into that program already kind of having an idea of what it is, it's not brand new by the time you turn 18 when things are getting real. It
Right.
might be different for girls and boys too, right? Like you have U15, you have the CHL draft where
Yeah.
they might want to even learn that a bit earlier. That could definitely vary.
And I feel like it's an important piece to add. Like you could have this at U13, maybe even a U11, but you got to make sure that it's not like set in stone. This is what you have to do, right? You're just creating some sort of roadmap of, okay, we're going to take, let's just say you're U11, right? We're going to take June completely off, be a family again, less travel, more family time, camp, whatever, focus on school, get past school. Okay, now we're going to be active, right, in the spring month or the summer months. And then August comes, okay, let's get back on the ice and start preparing, right? That way your kid's taken enough time away where they've missed it and want to get back in, right? And
Yeah.
you're not risking the factor in September,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And like that's a very simple way to start that sort of planning. So when you get to U15, U16 age, actually understands what's going on and why they're doing this,
Yeah.
right? And they understand the importance of it. And it all just started like, hey, look, this is what we're gonna do. as a family,
Yeah.
right?
I think like I'm also a big believer in giving the information and the resources to do something, but then it's ultimately up to the goalie. Like
Yeah.
you're giving, a kid the information. By the time they turn 18, you'll know if they want to be a goalie or not just by, well, do they want to use the information and the resources that they've been given to now take it upon themselves? Like at U18 level, I think you're more than capable to take it kind of into your own hands and learn a bit more independence on that front.
Yeah.
But I think definitely having it introduced earlier so that by the time they hit U18, they can be like, oh, okay, well, I've seen this before. So now it kind of starts to click a little bit, the gears start to turn, and everything kind of can just fall into place.
Yeah. They have
Definitely a bit
experience
early.
to pull from.
Yeah, definitely a bit earlier. I would say, like, just I'm not saying, like you said, to for a 11-year-old or a 12-year-old to plan out their whole summer. Like
Yeah.
it's rare that that's going to happen, and like they know what it looks like, they're introduced to the process of it, the options that they have, and then that by that point they're thinking about it earlier, they can play with it a few summers in a row, and by the time they're 18 they know what works for them, they know what doesn't, they know what feels good, they know what doesn't.
And you don't even have to tell them that that's their off-season plan. You can just say, hey, here's our family plan for the
Yeah,
summer.
absolutely, like however it will click, right?
Yeah. And you can write it out 1,000 times, and I bet you that as soon as you're done writing it out, it's going to change,
Yeah,
right? Either opportunity, something fortunate happens, whatever, right?
yeah,
It's always going to be subject to change, and that's fine, right? It's a plan, it's not set in stone. But wrapping up here, I do think it's important to plan, right?
absolutely, yep,
You don't have to over plan. You can just say, okay, this week I want to start getting back onto the ice. You don't have to be like this Tuesday, right? Just
yeah,
sometime this week
yeah,
and start making that connection early.
yeah,
So whoever you're getting on the ice with has time to plan for you, right? And then from there, oh, I want to start doing some off-ice training, start looking into some drills or some sort of program, right? Talk to other people, right? And then just be a kid.
yep.
Being a kid doesn't last too long, so enjoy it.
I'd love to be U13 again.
I would I would love to be you 15.
Fair.
Give me my six pack back.
I was in my prime at U13.
I
My
peaked at first
my
year U18, I think. I
I was
peaked.
like my first years as a goalie was my peak, basically.
Any words of wisdom to wrap up here from Coach Woodland? Coach
Um,
K?
okay. I would definitely just say like be aware. I think of all that you're doing. Soak up all that you're doing. Be a sponge. Like there's nothing that's worth not learning. Like it's like just take it in and pick and choose what you want to do with what works for you, and just carry on.
Awesome. Thanks for everybody listening. Stay tuned next week for another exciting episode.